Let's take a look at your weather from the CTV Weather Center. Lauren Fernandez with more good news. I'm willing to write off the rain that happened just a little bit over the weekend because the weather continues to be so nice.
Yeah, we lucked out, eh? We
did.
see beautiful skies today. Seasonal temperatures, our high today was 21 degrees, but I can't believe I'm going to tell you this because, yes, yesterday felt like fall. Sunday was really cold, but Environment Canada today has now issued a frost advisory for parts of southwestern Quebec. I cannot believe we're talking about this. Yes, Montreal is not in this, but for any of our listeners up in Saint-Agathe, tonight we're seeing temperatures expected to drop to near freezing overnight. So Environment Canada is just alerting people if you have any crops or plants, just something to consider because they could freeze overnight. Here in Montreal, though, we continue to see plenty of sunshine. Our sunset will happen at 7:15 p.m., and we'll see a few clouds overnight. Our low will be 9 degrees. It's a little fresh. Typically, we see lows around 11 this time of year. Tuesday brings more sunshine. We have a high tomorrow forecast for 20 degrees. And the rest of the week is definitely Aaron approved. Not a raindrop in sight.
Excellent.
And we're seeing warmer temperatures than today. Yes, I knew you'd like that. Wednesday, we'll see a high of 25, and we're looking at 27 for Thursday and Friday, also with sunshine. And I know it's still a little bit away, but the weekend, no rain. This is unbelievable. So we'll take it. I certainly will.
Nothing to complete for the whole week. We're looking right through Friday. No rain.
Yeah, it's like we hit the jackpot, I swear.
Well done. Thank you, Lauren.
No problem. I'll keep trying to bring you that type of forecast.
Keep up the good work. There you go. Lauren Fernandez at the Weather Center. It's 4:07.
James Mennie, brought to you by Gilbert & Daughter. Get an additional 50% off on spring and summer fashions. Gilbert & Daughter, 49 Donegany in Point Claire.
What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. So, Jim, a couple of things to talk about today. Can we start with Northvolt? Because now that Pierre Fitzgibbon is kind of out of the question, I'm starting to imagine, and I saw the story today, that we're going to start hearing a lot more of this, and there'll be no one to basically say, oh, no, everything is okay, because it doesn't look like everything is okay.
Well, I have to tell you, you can't link Fitzgibbon's departure to the announcement by Northvolt simply because they telegraphed the announcement well before his departure. But all that said, you have to wonder if, Pierre Fitzgibbon, our former Minister of the Economy and Energy, is heaving a huge sigh of relief when Northvolt, the jewel in our battery-making crown here in Quebec, turns around and says we're cutting back across the board on all of our operations. We will. Don't worry. Trust us. We will. We'll maintain our overseas investments in Germany, although we'd like a partner for our plant in Gdansk in Poland. But you can take it to the bank, my friends. We're going to stick behind that $7 billion development in Quebec, the $2.4 billion of which is coming from public money. Trust us, it's going to happen. The only problem, folks, is that, we are discovering, the way every other company is discovering, that the enthusiasm for electric vehicles globally is waning, which, of course, is the real story here, Aaron. You and I have discussed this angle. And even when they were throwing $2 billion of our money at this development, although it's not really thrown, they're sort of mid-pitch, and Christine Trichet's office said today, we haven't given any money yet. We've got to see results here. But the fact is, talk about getting caught up in what was really, as far as I'm concerned, nothing more than an attempt by Trudeau and Legault to have nice green-tinged photo ops. Yeah. Look at us. We're leading Quebec and Canada into the great new green future. And anybody, guys like you and I are sitting there going, I'm not sure about that. This all seems a bit rushed. This all seems a bit hurried. And every week since then, we've had some new news coming down the pike saying, no, it's not going to work. And this whole idea, this deadline of 2035, no more hybrid or gas vehicles, no, way too soon. And it will be thrown out the window. You and I know it. I think our listeners know it. But the fact of the matter is, talk about a huge, planetary class bucket of water to be thrown on this whole, this idea, especially François Legault's, des jobs payants pour les Québécois. I don't think so. I think, as a matter of fact, we'll be lucky if we don't, lose too much on operating costs. That we'll be able to recoup most of our principal on these loan guarantees and these subsidies, and we'll be able to move on. And perhaps, in the meantime, have a more realistic look at bringing. If you're genuinely interested in bringing EVs into the mainstream, you've got to have that infrastructure that is simply not there, and photo ops with foreign companies funded with our money is not going to do it.
You're right, Jim. We've discussed this before. I think once we were talking about the idea that imagine, we were spending all this money, and at the end of the day, it turns out it wasn't EVs after all, not lithium batteries anyway. It's going to be batteries from, I don't know what, kryptonite, where they just found some in, I don't know, on the moon. And this company, for all the money spent, what do we get for this? We end up with a big black eye.
I will give you full credit for this. I think it was almost more than a year ago that you simply said, listen, this technology is changing every other week.
Yeah.
What if all of a sudden, things change or things go south? And sure enough, they have. And I don't think you had to be necessarily, well, due respect to your prediction. You didn't have to be, a psychic to figure out that there's so much that could go wrong. There's so many unknowns.
Sure.
And sure enough, it's happening. The question now is, how will this development affect the debate, or, in the case of the Legault government, the inevitable resort to closure for Bill 69 for Quebec's energy policy? Because to a certain extent, that is founded upon it was founded on the idea that, we have to expand our capacity, bring in industry. But, François Legault, being the populist that he is, he's not going to raise the residential rates, and which even guys like Pierre Fitzgibbon are saying, I'm not sure you can really get away with that, boss. He's gone. Legault's still there. But the question remains, and it'll be very, very interesting if by, say, even 3 months from now, Aaron, in the early months of the new year, to see where Quebec's energy policy is, because something tells me it's not going to be the same battle lines that we're drawing right now.
All right, let me move on and talk about the other story, still with François Legault here. This you're writing identifying immigrant kids as the latest threat to Quebec. This is nothing. The immigrant blame game has been going on for a while. So what's this part about kids here?
Well,
too many?
Okay, you know what? I wasn't surprised when François Legault and company decided, and I'm not making an unfair extrapolation. When François Legault accuses immigrants of being responsible for teacher shortages and saying that, their kids are in our schools, well, guess what? You're creating a particular situation. You're creating perhaps a perspective on the part of not most or many Quebecers, but on some Quebecers that, they are part of the problem. But wait, there's more, Aaron, because in an amazing coincidence, the so-called, they don't call themselves the youth wing. I think they're the Comité de la Relève of the Coalition Avenir Québec. But the youth wing of the CAQ this past weekend said, we have got to reestablish civility in schools. We have got to reestablish discipline in schools. We have got to reestablish some sense of order, some sense of respect. And I, as I say repeatedly on the show, I have no belief whatsoever in coincidence. How much do you want to bet in 6 to 8 weeks the whole debate or the whole conversation over reestablishing civility and reestablishing respect in Quebec's school system will also include the observation that there are simply some people in that system who don't accept the values of Quebec? There are simply people in that school system who do not believe in the same things we do. Because I smell that this is the way that this is going. François Legault was embarrassed once again. He was embarrassed by the defeat, the by-election defeat in Jean Talon last October, and saw the CAQ riding handed to the PQ. And I think he was equally embarrassed by the abrupt departure of Pierre Fitzgibbon. He needs to change the channel, and the only way he knows to change the channel is to stand up and point at somebody and say, they're to blame for your problem. It's something the CAQ does all the time. And the only thing I'm waiting for, and this will be a real test, I think, even for the PQ, is do you guys, whether you're the PQ or the Quebec Liberal Party, which still hasn't figured out what it wants to be when it grows up, or Quebec Solidaire, is this the kind of very, very dangerous game that you guys want to tolerate, that you guys want to tacitly endorse by keeping quiet about? Because I think this is where we're headed, and I really don't like the way it's going.
Jim, I want to get to this because this was my question to start the show today. Just give me your take on what's happening in Amard-LaSalle-Verdun with Craig Sauvé, the NDP, and that flyer with the Palestinian flag. You've seen the story. This kind of blew up over the weekend. What do you make of this?
I got to tell you, the first time I saw it, I thought it had been photoshopped.
So did I.
Was trying to blow up. Someone was trying to blow up his campaign. And they're saying, no, I don't know if Craig Sauvé himself is responsible for this. If he is, well, you know what? You may pay the price for that next Monday. If it isn't, you might want to take a long, hard look at your handlers, because that was a really, really dumb move. I'm not talking about the merits of the case or the arguments about what's happening in Gaza, okay? That to one side. Placing a Palestinian flag on a flyer for a Montreal federal by-election, as far as I'm concerned, well, you saw the reaction that it got, and there will be a price to pay for Mr. Sauvé at the polls for that.
And that's where we will leave it, Jim. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good man.
Let's go to traffic, CJAD 800 Traffic Center. Check on your drive with Lauren Glazer. Lauren?